Hey. Hi, Manon. Can you hear
Hello.
me?
Yes, I can. Hi.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Are we
Great to
on?
see everyone.
Excellent. Um, Brilliant. Well, thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm delighted to introduce Manon De Reaper. Manon is a Dutch filmmaker who is currently in the United States, or bounces between the United States and Europe. She's a writer, a director, and the founder and former editor-in-chief of a Film Inquiry, which is an independent film magazine for film lovers and filmmakers. And she's currently embarking on her first Hollywood feature film. So Manon, thank you very much for joining us. First, I think the question is exactly where are you and what's the weather like?
So much better than it is in the US or in Europe anyway. I'm currently in Los Angeles and it is 3 a.m. So got up pretty early to come chat with you, and I'm really delighted to be here. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. So thank you for joining us and for staying up till the early hours to be here. So just about your background, let's start off with that. You started as, you graduated from uni. Tell us a little bit about the degree, because it's not, you didn't do film and you didn't do television or anything like that. So tell us about the degree and how you got into film.
Yeah, so my family, parents obviously weren't. It's the stereotypical thing where everyone is like, "You want to be a filmmaker? Like, are you sure?" That doesn't really sound like a great idea. So instead, after some urging, I decided to pursue psychology and criminology instead. So I have a bachelor's degree in clinical psychology and a master's degree in global criminology.
So a very proper degree or degrees
Proper,
right there,
yes.
right? Okay, so and tell us a little bit about what was that like, and what did you, where did you intend on going initially when you first started that? Well, what was your, where did you think that was going to take you?
So very shortly after finishing my degrees, my husband and I we moved to Australia, and there I was hoping to maybe pursue a PhD in criminology or something like that. And even during my criminology degree, I already studied film, so I specifically focused on like how policymakers should be watching more dystopian science fiction films to basically learn about the potential impact of certain policies that they really can't imagine. Um, and so that around that time, I founded Film Inquiry because that allowed me to keep studying film in a similar way.
Right.
Because unfortunately, when I moved to Australia, I wasn't quite able to find the PhD. I couldn't work with the police just because, as a foreigner, like a non full time resident, you're not allowed to work with the government, like you're automatically excluded. So that basically still pushed me in the direction of film.
Right. Okay. So what is it about film that's attractive? Well, what is, because some people find that as a real calling. Um, why film? What attracted you to it?
I kind of grew up with it. I watched a lot of movies when I was younger, specifically American movies, which is also, I think, a large reason for why I ended up with a little bit of an American accent. Um, so I watched a lot of American films growing up and always loved it. Then started working at like a DVD store when I was 15 or 16, and already established myself as like the film specialist when I was 17. And it for me it was always something that taught me to uh, understand the world. We usually see characters in film that you don't really get to see otherwise. So um, as an empathetic person, I love engaging with these types of stories and learning to understand the world. And now also as a filmmaker, getting to contribute to that, especially in a landscape that is neglecting to tell many stories of many people. Um, yeah.
Fantastic. And were you always attracted to a particular genre? Because you, we'll come to the film that you're working on, you've written and you're in development with in a moment, but were you always attracted to a specific genre, or were you always open to all genres, and then you found this particular genre that you're now on? Were you always into a theme?
I, yeah, horror has always been a little bit of my passion, as well as science fiction, actually.
Okay.
Fantasy, too. Um, but fantasy, I've sort of not embraced quite so much because it's a sci fi, same thing. It's so expensive to make. So that's why I've kind of been focusing on horror, but I already started reading horror books when I was like 6 years old or 8 years old. You know, these horror books that they write for kids.
And was there a connection between, the psychology, the criminology, it's like research that you'd been doing, and the genre of horror? Was that kind of a conscious connection? Is there a connection at all with the stuff that you write? And can you tell me a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. For me, it's so much. The A lot of my writing is about basically the horror of what happens in the mind. I love psychological horror. I think it's so fascinating, and also having studied psychology, I'm very well aware of how little we actually know and understand about the brain. And now we feel like we have figured it all out with pharmaceuticals, but I don't know. So it's those kinds of things to me. It's just horrific and horrifying, and that definitely steered me into the direction of psychological horror a lot, and for criminology too. I think um, so many things of what happens to people around the world is. I mean, a firm belief I have is that, for example, the true crime genre is basically a subgenre of horror and how the audience engages with it.
Very cool. Very cool. So you um, left Holland to go to Australia, and am I right in thinking whilst you were there, is that when you set up Film Inquiry? So tell us a little bit about the magazine Film Inquiry,
Oh yeah.
how you set it up and why.
So at the time, so this was about 2014. I had just completed my degree and moved there. And I was desperate to engage with film more. And so I started writing these really, kind of long form essays, really engaging with more the subject of the film rather than surface level reviews, I guess. So I really, for example, what comes to mind is I wrote a really lengthy review on True Detective when it first came out, and like the portrayals of crime and police, and also certain stereotypes and tropes, which is something that I always really enjoy writing about. And so at the time, it was just me, but then more and more people started joining me in that, and then it grew out. And I think at this point, we have worked with hundreds of writers from around the world of all genders, of all backgrounds, and that was something else that I was very passionate about because at the time, um, well, you're probably all familiar with Rotten Tomatoes, but Rotten Tomatoes at the time did not recognize any papers that weren't like either in print or like one of the big established um, online outlets. And so I was one of the people that worked with them to open that up, because these types of publications tend to be very exclusive to certain people. And so since then, they've been allowing more and more journalists of smaller publications onto that platform as well, so that the ratings in on Rotten Tomatoes aren't just from this uh, coming from the same kinds of people over and over, and then by that influencing also, how and why the audience consumes certain films and might skip others. And so that was something that I've always been very passionate about, and specifically film inquiry. We kept doing what we um, what we were doing and started going to film festivals around the world. And that really led me to engage more with filmmakers in person and learning more about their craft, also through interviewing and just being at these film festivals specifically has been very informative for the steps that I took next.
I'd like to come to the film festival bit just in a minute, but just how you would go about, because I know nothing about setting up like magazines and all of that. Was it quite straightforward to set up? Or were you just running it from a laptop, or was there a team? You know, the whole process of setting up this
Uh,
film inquiry. Well, how did you go about doing
okay,
that?
so
What
you
was
want to
that
get
like?
into the real nitty gritty of that. Um, so it it was just me. So it was a WordPress based website, if that means anything to anyone over there. But it so I do have a background in web development, so that's what I did for a long time to kind of, as a side gig. And so I did have some experience with that. And to this day, I help out with the tech side of the website, even though I'm not like full time like involved with the website anymore. Um, but yeah, it's quite involved. But it was just me, my laptop. Um, very, you can work anywhere essentially,
Yeah,
and it's an editing type of software,
yeah.
and that allows you to, people can submit posts, and then I would edit them, and our our new editor in chief does, and yeah, so basically,
Right.
kind of like that. I hope that
Fantastic.
makes sense.
And from the whole process of setting that up, what have you learned from what did you learn from the process of having a magazine, and getting an insight into the industry? What can you remember the type of things that you kind of gained from it, or some insights that you got from the
Oh yeah,
benefit of
I
it?
mean, specifically, um, learning about film press, film marketing, and how filmmakers engage with press, and also the impact that press can have and the responsibility that we have. I have been threatened by filmmakers, which was very unpleasant.
Sorry, you were
Thankfully,
threatened by filmmakers.
yes, because someone was unhappy with like it wasn't even that negative of a review, but apparently they had already been having issues, and then yeah, that was not a fun situation. But thankfully, the from the in the 8+ years that I've been involved with the magazine, like that was the only time that that ever happened. And mostly, people are really happy to have reviews. And personally, I think it's better to get a bad review than no review at all.
Right.
Because at least then that means that people had something to say or think about your film, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you just disappear in a fog of obscurity where no one is talking about your project, that's really kind of the sad thing. So that taught me. It really prepared me also to engage with um, reviews in the future as a filmmaker, but also as someone working in press, like seeing how people submit, um, requests for interviews. For example, I've had many independent filmmakers who would submit a request for a review, and it would be like a one paragraph email saying like, "Hey, I made a film. Do you want to do a review?"
Right.
And basically, as a filmmaker, you want to make it as easy as possible for the reviewer who is bombarded
Right.
with emails. Like I think I got like 1 or 2 thousand emails a month,
Oh wow.
um, and mostly that's publicists from studios, production companies, the film festivals, like the award shows, whatever. Like all of these people are basically desperate for you to publish something about your film. And so if an independent filmmaker then comes through, it is just like, hey, I made a film. It would make it very hard for me to engage with that. So I also started teaching some classes to people, like how do you actually communicate with the press and how do you make it as easy as possible, and what is an electronic press kit, for example, which a lot of people are not familiar with.
Right.
which is, the package that you send to press with all of the relevant information about your film, with relevant links, bios, summaries, log lines, so that, they have everything right away, um, to just write a review, and you don't even have to ask them to go have a back and forth.
Right. Fantastic. Could you tell us a little bit about the film festivals? Because we had a chat about it's like your experience with film festivals. So for those who haven't submitted films to film festivals, what would you say the benefits? Well, what are the part of the benefits that come with it?
As a filmmaker,
As a filmmaker, yeah, as filmmakers.
yeah, so my experience so far has been, both from, the filmmaker side. I've been at festivals as press,
Yeah.
and I've also been a judge on film festivals. So I have a little bit of like a, I know, I understand like quite a few parts of it. For filmmakers, it's very hard. So if you look at some of the big ones, um, I'm just going to take Sundance Film Festival as an example,
Mm.
but it's kind of like blanket for most of the big ones. Uh, a lot of the slots are specifically for feature films are kind of already given away to companies that have deals with Sundance, or for example, Sundance reserved slots for films that were made specifically in Utah.
Okay.
Um, and uh, so they still have people submit their films through the standard submission form where you pay like 45, or I don't know how much it is nowadays, like $70. I just paid for a short film, to submit a short film to Berlin Film Festival. Like it's a lot of money that you're spending on these submissions.
Yeah.
But realistically, like a lot of these slots have already been either been given away, or and it's a little bit different for the short film sections where, um, obviously there's more time, right? Just because the
Mm.
films are a lot shorter. Um, but it's still hard because sometimes these festivals get 5,000 submissions, and once they've sort of whittled down to the top, I don't know, 200, you're basically in a pool of amazing people,
Hmm.
and it becomes a little bit of a gamble, and it does become a lot about like who do you know,
Right.
and that does really help. It's like networking with,
Right.
film festival programmers can help, and a lot of people do that.
Hmm.
And I'm always a little bit critical about these things because I feel like it, and I guess that's the crime background is I'm always like this really, promotes corruption because I don't know, people do crazy things if they're desperate, right? So
Right.
sometimes that does happen a little bit. I feel like where it's not an entirely positive process. Also, if you look at submitting for scripts, you have so many of these contests. You have big festivals that, do these screenwriting competitions. And if you consider, for example, Austin Film Festival is a festival that has, historically had a very, very good reputation when it comes to their, screenwriting competition. But in the past 2 years or so, like some stuff has, become more publicly known that the people that they hire, I mean, again, they receive like 5,000 submissions, like the people that they hire to write or to read all these scripts,
Oops. Well, we've just lost you. Let's hopefully we'll pick up the satellite will move.
hello? Are we still there?
Yeah, still here. There you go. You're back again. Yeah, I think there was
Excellent.
a cloud or something somewhere over the Atlantic that blocked the
Maybe.
signal. So
Sorry
yeah,
about
you were just talking about script writers in the competitions in Austin, and that they'll get 5,000 submissions. And it's really really
that.
tough. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is tough, but also like they now, it's become, known that they're not really compensating their readers fairly, and the people that they're hiring to read these scripts are not industry professionals. So basically, the people determining whether or not you're a good writer are people who have absolutely no understanding of filmmaking.
Right.
So it's these are the realities of these festivals
Right.
that, for them, it's really financially, you know, a viable thing where they're, I mean, just do the math. If they have 5,000 submissions and it's 50 a pop, it's a lot of money
Yeah.
for these festivals that, you know,
Right.
uh, they're that they want to keep doing. And especially, I'm sure that you all are familiar with Film Freeway.
Yeah.
There is just 20 million of these tiny festivals on there or competitions, and definitely I would recommend being very critical of where you submit because not all of them are legitimate.
Cool. Sound advice. So basically, when submitting anything, is do your research, choose wisely. Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your feature film that you've got in development. So it's your first. It's a Hollywood feature film. It's not just a feature film. It's a Hollywood feature film. It's in development. It's with XYZ Films. So how's it going, and how did that all come about?
It, the XYZ thing is not completely formal yet, and that was
Okay.
because of this strike,
Right.
which,
Yes.
by the way, ended yesterday,
Yes.
the actors' union strike, which is very exciting. So it felt like, you know, they start, you know how you start a lawnmower? Like that was what happened with the, with the industry yesterday.
Yeah.
Everyone was texting like, "Oh my God."
So how did
Um,
that? How did the strike directly impact you? You know, and this
oh,
project.
sure, like quite a bit. Obviously, working in Hollywood specifically, um, we have been casting for a long time already. I wrote this script in 2020. Very tough time to pitch stuff. So over the course of 2021, I was pitching this script, and everyone was like, "Oh, it's a great script, but you know, we're not really doing anything right now. Studios, companies weren't really greenlighting projects, but we would love for you to write something for us
Oh,
based on our idea."
oh, just 2 seconds. We've got a little bit of a glitch again.
Okay. I don't know
Okay.
why that's happening. I guess the connection is not
Yeah. Well,
100%,
yeah.
but we'll just have to deal
Yeah.
with it, guys.
So it's 2020. You've got the idea. And it's really difficult to get things commissioned and stuff. But you're managing to pitch, and that's where we were.
Was yes, and the response was really good, except no one was really like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and actually put money behind this and make the film. So by the end of 2021, I was like, you know what, I had built a really fantastic network at that point, which I cannot stress enough. Is like you don't need managers, agents, or any of that. Just start working on your own network, make friends, get to know people, you know, because that is the thing that's really going to help you the most and allowed me to be like, hey, I know all of these people. I'm just going to ask the people that I know are good people to come work with me on this project. And thankfully, basically everyone said yes, which has been amazing. It's been such a fun process. So by early 2022, we had started to set up, you know, and I was not aware like the amount of paperwork involved with setting up a feature film. So largely it was me learning about the finance side of things, setting up a company, you know, and then it turned out we had to also set up another company, which is like the production company behind it, and then, you know, attorneys and all of these conversations. And then you start talking with some of these investors and you have to start learning some of you know, investment basics, which
Right.
I didn't know much about. So, and then we started casting. We started our casting process, I think, mid 2022, and we carried that all the way through, you know, end of 2022, and started going out to people. Obviously, this was like a smaller budget psychological horror with an absolute nobody attached, as in me. Um, and at that point we had a sales agent attached to the project as well, and you will find that sales agents, they want you to go after a certain caliber of cast, right? So this script specifically features a black woman in her late 50s to early 60s, and that pool of women in working in Hollywood is very small.
Right.
So we went out to Viola Davis, we went out to Angela Bassett, and so what that entails is your casting director puts together a package, and they send that offer to their whoever it is that you're reaching out to, their agent.
Hmm.
And so this agent receives it, and it's probably going on a pile of God knows how many of these types of offers, right? Um, some of them passed really quickly, for which we were grateful. So Viola Davis gave us a 1 day no,
Right.
infinitely grateful. Angela Bassett took a month, which it's a faux pas to reach out to multiple people at the same time.
Hmm.
So you have to wait for the formal pass before you can go again. So basically, that means that you're essentially waiting for months and months to get a rejection.
Right.
Uh, the casting process is really, really quite brutal, as I'm learning. And so at some point, um, you're going to go kind of down the ladder. And I hate talking about it that way because these are all really great actors. They're just not as well known.
Hmm.
Um, so then the strike happened, and that meant, well, it already during the WGA strike, the writers' strike, we weren't as heavily impacted because the script already been written. I'm not a WGA member, so I was a little bit more free in moving. Yet they were essentially the union was like, if you write anything during this period of time, you're considered a scab, which
Right.
is which means that you're doing work while a strike is on, um, and so I couldn't really pursue any other writing work either, even though I'm not even a member, right? And then the actors' strike happened, and that basically killed all the progress on our film, or at least stalled it, paused it,
Hmm.
um, because we had to literally like stop reaching out to any actors. So we couldn't do any of this anymore. So, for example, we sent out an offer to Giancarlo Esposito, who's a wonderful actor. You may know him from Breaking Bad.
Hmm.
We sent him an offer the week the strike started, like a couple days before, and this offer went to his manager, and he was immediately like, "We cannot engage."
Because
Then
of the
we said,
strike.
yes. So everyone, unless you had an interim agreement which the union put together for independent productions, um, we got it last week, which meant that we could start casting again during the strike, except now the strike is over, so now everyone is back at it. But
Right.
the interim agreement for a while was really considered like a golden ticket because that
Right.
now allowed you to engage with all of these representatives again and the actual actors.
Yeah.
Um, so I feel a little sour about the fact that we only had this 1 week of this interim agreement and we couldn't even re-engage our casting directors in that time. So,
Right. Right.
oh well. Um,
Well, I'm
yeah.
just really
So,
conscious of time at the moment, and I know that we've got some questions that
yes,
we'd
please.
like to throw over to some of the students. So, do we have? Yes, we have. Our hands are going up. This is fantastic. Thank you.
I love it.
Hi, Manon. Thanks for talking to us today. Um,
My pleasure.
within the SAG-AFTRA strike, it mentions about introducing contract provisions for protecting diverse communities, and I know you've done a lot of work with supporting and mentoring women of colour in the film industry. So I was just wondering how you think this provision will sort of impact women of colour in the film industry going forward.
That's total news to me. I mean, it's 3 a.m. I haven't even looked at my phone yet to see what's happened since. So that's really good news, though. That's amazing. I'm so delighted to hear that that was a part of the negotiations, actually. And when was it? A couple years ago, you might remember that Frances McDormand at the Oscars talked about the inclusion rider. I'm not sure if that is what they put in, um, but I'm hoping that this will help. I don't know if it will have any immediate impact, because we have seen that, the union specifically. So, just in case you don't know, I also work with an organization called Women of Color Unite, and we've been really fighting for all of these, more fair inclusion and payment for women of color specifically. Um, but the unions have been the absolute hardest for us, actually, to to work with, because their practices are, the way that they're set up is inherently exclusionary, not just of women of color, and other people of color, or other marginalized folks, but any marginalized person. And I can only hope that this is helpful, and I'm really looking forward to checking out this clause, because that sounds very interesting.
Brilliant. Yep.
Hi. When I start a project, I always have like shots in my mind's eye, but I struggle to sort of communicate my creative vision. How do you go about communicating your creative vision to especially your actors?
Oh, to the actors. Oh, I will say that is actually one of the things where my psychology degree comes in really, really handy. Um, I will say, it's like, I think any act or any director should probably either do like a communication course, or in lieu of that, probably an acting class too, because then at least you can sort of feel and understand like how to communicate, and how you would like to be communicated to as an actor. And a lot of it is, especially because the language that we need to use with actors is so emotion based, and to qualify that can be really hard. Um, there is a book that is specifically about that. It's called Directing Actors, I think, by Judith Weston, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
But
Yep.
yeah. And that book is really great, because it specifically gives you like, um, incredibly detailed tools on how to communicate with your actors, and what type of language to use and what not to use also, because it's easy to to create some strife with your actor, if you're not like, if you're here and they're there, or other way around, right?
Hi, I'm curious to know, like, since you've done a lot of reviewing and stuff, what's the best film you've ever seen at a film festival, and what do you think it did that made it so memorable to you?
I don't know if anyone has seen Sorry to Bother You.
Yeah, I know that film.
I saw the premiere at South by Southwest in 2018, and it just blew me away. I guess I have a little bit of like a quirky taste, and I love horror and genre stuff, but that film for me was like, wow, it gave me hope for Hollywood making like weirder films, and stories that weren't as, hitting you over the head with, um, or preaching to the audience. And he, Boots Riley is an absolutely sublime filmmaker who is so good at allegory, and that film just absolutely blew my mind, and I loved it. And seeing that then was really fun, and we were really like a part of the filmmaker then, was really like a part of the bandwagon of really supporting and promoting this film. Yeah,
Thank you.
of course.
I've got a quick one. You're a woman of color working in the industry, working in Hollywood, yeah, working in the States, and you were in Austin as well, I believe, in Austin, Texas. So, what's been your experiences? Have they all been positive? Because I mean, I think the way that they love to present it is that, things have changed and things are for the better, and it's great. So, what about your experiences?
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a damper, I guess, but no, we're nowhere near like where inclusion is fair and equitable. The thing about Hollywood, specifically Hollywood, but I think in a lot of places in the world, they're very good at saying the right thing. I mean, they're the masters of image crafting. That's their day job. So they're very good at spin and they know what to say. Um, but a lot of these people are not really as progressive as they seem. And also, a lot of people are very scared of losing their jobs and losing the power that they've had. And for some of these people, really for generations, right? Because so much of the film industry is often a family business. And so, Black Lives Matter and 2020 was a period of time when it seemed a lot more hopeful, but it was really like that was a crisis and people were so eager to do something. I will say there's a lot of really, really great individuals who do want to contribute to making change and being more inclusive because that's also what they know. Like there's so many people who come from different backgrounds and have come here um, and want to make things different. But I mean, the studios, the streamers, you know, a lot of these bigger production companies, it is still really hard. A lot of people are still tokenized. And especially currently because the strikes have hit Hollywood so hard, the people that everyone was basically out of work. And the first people to leave the industry because of that are marginalized folks who don't make as much. So they don't have like a year's reserve to kind of just sit around and not work. So of course it's going to be the marginalized folks who leave the industry first, which is really sad because that undoes a lot of the work that was done during 2020. So I was just speaking with my DP yesterday, and she was also already seeing it's like they're now going to prioritize the same kinds of people again, because that's the people that are left, and that's the buddies that they have, and it's the so we just to say is that it's completely possible to just still keep going, but it requires a lot, and it also requires a certain awareness that this really is very much still at play and to not be caught aback by it when it does happen, whether that's like racist incidences or colorist incidents or misogyny. Like I've seen it all, and quite severely, honestly. Like I've never seen anything like that in the Netherlands. Um, so that was quite an eye opener culture wise here in the US, I will say.
Any more? Oh, we've got.
Bear with me, I'm a middle-aged man. You don't want to see me running. I'm waddling. Alex, was it?
I'm married to a middle aged white guy, so please.
We're not good at running.
How do you feel about like the whole idea of jump scares in horror? Do you think that's a bit overdone and it needs to evolve away from that, or do you think it can be good if it's executed in the right way? How do you feel about that as a horror director?
Uh, Horror scares. That's a really great question. I think when they're done effectively, it's done. It can be really great. Sometimes they're used as a crutch, though. When I saw The Nun recently, and there is just jump scare after jump scare after jump scare after jump scare, and there's just no, relief whatsoever, and very little story too, to be honest. And and for a good example, I'm thinking of Crimson Peak by Guillermo del Toro. It was a 2015 film, I think. I love that one, and there's one very significant jump, or one or two very significant jump scares in that film, and both have very significant relevance for the actual story and like the emotional journey of the characters. Another one would be Haunting of Hill House, where the jump scares were emotionally and like relevant to the story, and they weren't overused. And I think that is something that we have to be really mindful of. Is that the jump scare when we do use them, that they make sense, and like then it's not just like but um, they make you feel more than just the jump scare. It's like, oh my god, like this
Yeah.
is yeah. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Okay, I've got two questions. First question is, can you give us the elevator pitch for the film you've got in development? And secondly, what is the go-to horror film for you that you want to watch every single year just to scare you out of your skin?
Oh, well, to answer that first, it's The Shining. It's my all-time favorite still, and I think it's such a masterfully crafted film and sort of like this seminal horror film. And as for the elevator pitch, I'm not a huge fan of elevator pitches, to be honest, but I'll do my best. So, and we've been working on this because usually, like in meetings, you don't really do an elevator type pitch thing. You get a little bit more time to kind of get into it. So basically, my feature film is about an older Black woman who's living in the woods, like on the side skirts of a small town. She has done something in her past, but she is starting to forget because she is suffering from early onset dementia, which is a huge spoiler, but that is something that we need to include on our pitches because it is the hook. And so basically, her past is starting to catch up to her. She's slipping, like she's on the run from actually killing her husband in self-defense, and so she's been living in hiding for a very long time. And as she's starting to slip, she's starting to imagine the police coming after her, and it's unclear whether or not that's actually happening. And the way that we're pitching it, and comps are very important in these types of situations, is Moonlight meets Memento. And I hope that.
Brilliant. And just finally, we've got journalists here, we've got filmmakers here, we've got writers here, all from a very, very broad background. What advice, just very simply, what advice would you give them right at the very beginning of their careers to looking forward?
Same for everyone, honestly, and especially writers, because I know screenwriters don't go out as much as everyone else, but um, networking. Focus on networking, getting to know people. Don't just look up the ladder, look around, because those are the people you're going to be working with already now in school, make friends. Like down the road, people are going to be want to be working with the people that they liked, and they're going to call you if they liked you. They're not going to call you if they either don't know you, because that's one. But if you weren't particularly nice with people, people like working with good people that they know that they can depend on, specifically in film, because so much of it is taking risks. So much of it is, you're not sure if you're going to make money on this thing. As for press, same thing, is you need to know as many people as possible. You need to go to the festivals, or if depending on whatever it is that you're interested in covering as a journalist, but start engaging with that subject in person as soon as possible, or at least Zooms, but um, whatever the future is going to bring us with pandemics or whatever. But uh, just connecting with people, and that's been absolutely the most vital thing for me. Build a network that you can depend on, that you can trust, that's good people that you can work with, that it's the most important thing. And that's what I would tell you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, everybody. Manon De Reaper.
Thanks so much.
Wonderful. So 15 minutes we've got now until, hold on.